call me a hopeless romantic, but you and me were made for each other.
Let me be Frank.
No, me Frank. You, Mrs. Frank.
Well, if I could fake it for 30 years with Charles Lawton. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. The 5 points I articulate are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and for the entire month of October, we're going to have some very special Halloween reviews. The Bride of Frankenstein, the creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, the Phantom of the Opera. What better way to wrap up 5 POA-ween than with a monster mash? As far as I'm concerned, all of these figures are a solid 5 out of 5, so instead of my usual scoring, today is going to be more of a showcase. Starting with the packaging, and each one of these is a work of art. The front flap features the respective poster art of each film, including all the original names and credits. Additionally, each one has some spot varnishing to really help certain parts pop. Flipping them around in the backs are really cool as well, each one being a collage showing off the different accessories. These backs are so nice, in fact, that the boxes are kind of reversible. Frontwards or backwards, you really want to sink your teeth into them. The sides of the boxes are really impressive as well, and one should know it, but those are reversible too. Lining up the entire series so far, and it does create quite an impressive display. No doubt you noticed the lack of Universal Monsters logo on Phantom of the Opera. That's because while the Phantom of the Opera technically is a Universal monster, the film was made in 1925 and has lapsed into the public domain. Even so, this figure was made in cooperation with Lon Chaney's estate, same as those holding the rights to Bela Lugosi's likeness. Opening the flaps, we get more figure photography, and frankly, I can never gush enough about how NECA makes the best boxes in the biz. Hey buddy, watch the flippers. Moving on to presentation, and while Bride, Dracula, and the Phantom top out at 7 1/4 inches, the creature from the Black Lagoon comes to 8. This is scarcely a surprise, as creature actor Ben Chapman was 6'5". Also, strictly speaking, Bride is the shortest, but her hair makes up for the height difference. Speaking of her famous hair, I'm sure a lot of you were surprised to discover that it's actually a reddish auburn instead of black and white, but one thing that should come as no shock is the incredible likeness to actress Elsa Lanchester. I'm equally amazed at Dracula, who really does feel like Bela Lugosi come back from the dead. There is just so much personality and nuance in this portrait. Don't get me wrong, Phantom of the Opera is an incredible likeness to Lon Chaney, but monsters are kinda NECA's thing. Their track record with normal human likenesses is less sterling. Also, while I'm here, you might expect me to complain about the side-eye, but I'm actually not going to. More on that during playability. Monsters being NECA's milieu, the creature from the Black Lagoon is the most monstrous monster of the line. He's also the only classic Universal monster actor I ever got to meet in real life. While the other monsters were mostly in regular clothes, Ben Chapman and underwater performer Rico Ren Browning were covered head to toe in full rubber gear. NECA has paid extra care to every gill and scale. The segmented nature of his design does a great job of hiding articulation points, and I really love the metallic copper dry brushing to bring all those details out. That said, my mental image of the creature has a lighter green in the mouth and also going down into the stomach, but that's more influenced by other products and maybe not so much what it looked like behind the scenes. Phantom and Dracula have it much easier, wearing era-appropriate evening wear. Just think, fellas, there was a time when hiking your trousers up this high was fashionable. Dracula, however, has his medallion, which adds a splash of color to break up the monochrome. He also has a longer coat, and all of his hair. But seriously though, look at the paint job on that scalp. Of course, the bride wouldn't really be a bride at all if not for her long white gown. NECA's used a very generous amount of fabric to bring this to life. It also has stitches in the back. Taking that gown off though, we can see her bandaged up bodysuit. While not as weathered as the mummy, the detail is every bit extraordinary. Each layer has been painstakingly sculpted and textured, and if you're concerned about all that green, that's just a reflection from my poster board. Flip it around, and here comes the bride from the back. Moving on to posability, and I'm going to keep the gown off for this section too. From the top, and our monsters can look up this much, and this far down. Dracula, Phantom, and Creature have articulation in the base of the neck and the base of the skull, which gives very realistic tilt. Moving down, they can raise their arms arms this high, with Creature being the best of the bunch. And thanks to NECA's unique double elbow system, he's the only one with bicep swivel. Gillman can bend his arms this deep, though given that the rest of them only have single jointed swivel, Phantom and Dracula are pretty equivalent. At the ends of their arms, each 4 of our monsters have swivel hinge wrists. Moving to the middle, and that's where our monsters have some major differences. Drac and Phantom have rolly stomachs, not a whole lot of arching back because the coats, but they can hunch forward a bit. They also get a bit of tilt and twist. All the Bride has is a diaphragm joint. She can only arch back this far, which also isn't very much. She can hunch forward this far, which is better than nothing. And while the tilt isn't much to speak of, she does get twist. As for Gillman, he has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. He can arch back this far, which is the best of the 4, and he can hunch forward this far, which for a diaphragm is pretty decent. He also gets a bit of tilt and twist. Below the belt, scales, and bandages, all 4 of our monsters have ball jointed hips. Lowest kick goes to Phantom, then Bride, then Creature, with Dracula surprisingly being the highest kick. No thigh cut, but there is a twist in the hips similar to a Mayfex. Definitely a lot more functional than a DC Multiverse. That said, of the 4, Creature's the only one with double jointed knees. Everyone else has single jointed swivel, but each of them have ankles that can hinge and pivot. And of all of them, Gillman is the most articulated, but they all strike a balance between posability and presentation that's more than enough for me. Moving on to playability, and Bride has an additional bandaged head. Her eyes underneath are very striking, but you can cover them up with this snap-on wrap. Additionally, she comes with alternate open hands and some extra dangly bandages, and an alternate screaming head recreating one of the most iconic shots in horror movie history. Creature comes up short in this department, featuring an alternate head with an open mouth, and an open head with an articulated mouth. Kinda feels like they could have cut one of these out and it wouldn't have made a difference. Otherwise, he does come with 6 alternate hands, which is pretty impressive. In addition to these stop, don't shoot hands, he also has hands that are spread slightly wider, hands that are slightly hooked for attack, and hands that are a bit more gestury. If Creature from the Black Lagoon got the shortest end of the steak, Dracula definitely got the longest. In addition to the smirking portrait, he also comes with this more serious one. The intensity of his gaze really does have a hypnotic quality. He also has this more menacing expression. If you're wondering where the fangs are, Bela Lugosi was actually not depicted as having them. Of course, it's the hospitality that counts, so Dracula has a silver platter, a bottle of very old wine, and a couple of chalices. That said, Dracula never drinks wine. Drac welcomes Renfield to the castle with this creepy candle. He's also got a special alternate hand to hold it. Wonderful texture and detail, and the candle itself looks particularly gooey. The Count has a couple of additional hands for clutching and hypnotizing. Most importantly, Dracula has his cape. The collar is a plastic piece that clamps around the neck, but the cape itself is a heavy fabric that hangs very naturally. When it comes to cloth goods capes, no domestic toy company is better than NECA. If Dracula wasn't already bat-like enough for you, he also comes with a giant bat. I personally think he's kind of adorable. He even comes with an acrylic stand so you can fly him around. If all that wasn't enough, Dracula even gets his very own accessories set. It includes a giant spider, a possum, and an armadillo. I'm sorry, is Dracula from Transylvania or from Florida? The set also includes a Jerusalem cricket, and most importantly, his coffin. The sculpt is simple, but there's some nice painted detail, dangly rings on the side, and a hinged lid. If there was any concern, Dracula has no trouble fitting inside. Rounding out the set is a cardboard backdrop. Now remember how I said I didn't mind the Phantom of the Opera having side-eye? That's because he comes with an option looking straight ahead. He's also got this laughing one looking to the right, and a screaming face recreating the iconic moment where his mask is pulled away. Speaking of masks, he even comes with a masked head, featuring the transparent section covering his mouth. He also has a hat. That's 4 additional heads. The Phantom also has alternate hands, including this one to hold his bamboo stick. And just as Dracula has his cape, the Phantom has his cloak. The fabric is a crushed velvet, which adds a very nice texture, but NECA went the extra mile to add wires to it so that you can pose it. Between all the heads and the wire cloak, the value of this figure is unreal. But even as well packed as these figures are, playability is more than just accessories. It's also about how well your figures play with others. First up, and it's only fitting, we should see the Bride of Frankenstein with Frankenstein's monster. Aside from Monster Squad, I can't think of a time him where the Gill Man met the Frankenstein monster, though he has been depicted as being a foil to Dracula from time to time. As for Phantom, this is pretty much the perfect use for side-eye. From one iconic Boris Karloff character to another, and here we have Imhotep, the Mummy. What kind of bandages are you working with under there, sweet cheeks? Seeing Mummy with the Gill Man really showcases just how tall the creature from the Black Lagoon really was. Swapping in Dracula, though, and we can unravel the alleged feud between Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. Spoiler alert, there wasn't actually a feud. Phantom actor Lon Chaney's son, Lon Chaney Jr., would go on to play Karras the Mummy in later Mummy sequels. Rounding out the big four Universal monsters, and here's the Wolfman. Although werewolves have existed in folklore for ages, similar to the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman was an original creation by Universal Studios. As a fellow creature of the night, it's only natural to pair him with Dracula. And here we see Lon Chaney Sr. and Lon Chaney Jr. in their most iconic characters. Since they wear the same outfit, it's only natural to transition from the Wolfman to Jason Voorhees and some more modern monsters. As a tall, lumbering creature of the lake, Jason's kinda like a combination of Frankenstein's monster and the creature from the Black Lagoon. Of course, if Jason is the Frankenstein monster, I think that would pretty much make Dracula Freddy. Of course, Freddy Krueger actor Robert Englund did play the Phantom of the Opera, so maybe that comparison's a bit more apt. And hey, with all that talk about Freddy, might as well bring him out. This is the Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Ultimate version. Only difference is I swapped out the glove with the original release because the Ultimate version is not accurate. For whatever reason, they gave Ultimate Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Freddy the glove from Freddy vs. Jason. Moving on to a different modern monster, and here we have Michael Myers. This one's from the 2018 reboot. Sadly, NECA doesn't have likeness rights for the original film, though they do have Halloween 2. For one final monster, and here's Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Both versions are so iconic in their own way that I just really couldn't choose. Which one do you prefer, old or new? Sound off in the comments below. For a roll-to-scale comparison, here's Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. Creature from the Black Lagoon is kinda like the Lizard. Thanks to Morbius, Spidey knows all about fighting vampires. That said, if you want some Marvel Legends scale monsters, it's probably best to pick up some figures by Jada. Definitely not that one! And lastly, here's my entire Universal Monsters collection with Stealth Iron Man wishing you a happy Halloween. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Depending on where you buy them, these monsters range anywhere from $34 to $37, and while I do long for the old days of only $30 a figure when you factor in the sculpting and paint detail along with all the accessories, these monsters are a monster of a deal. Which Universal monster figure is your favorite so far, and who do you hope that NECA makes next? Sound off in the comments below. For more 5 POA Ween videos, check out one of these, and come back for more Halloween videos all month long. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice, have fun, and stay spooky.